I'll be speaking about history, and not just a part of history, it's this part of history. This was when the Roman Emperor Trajan conquered the Parthian kingdom. Now, the Parthian kingdom was this region over here. The Parthian kingdom was a loose federation of Greek, of small Greek states, because they were governed by Greek elites, and they had a king over them, and the capital was near the Euphrates River. The Parthian kingdom was what was left of the Seleucid kingdom that was later divided between the Syrian kingdom and the Parthian part of the kingdom. And the Parthian part remained in existence during the Roman Empire, but the Parthian kingdom did not enter history as a very effective polity. Okay, one reason why the Parthian kingdom, if you want to call it a kingdom, was effective was because all the rulers were Greek, and Greek was the spoken language in politics and in economy in the world at the time. So that's why it was easy for them to trade with the Greek-speaking world of the Roman Empire. And here you cross this desert over here, you have China, and the Chinese Empire, or let me say the Han Dynasty, was the second most powerful polity at the time on the earth. The first was Rome, the second was the Han Empire. So the Parthian kingdom was between the Han Empire and the Roman Empire. Of course, you have India down here, but we had the Silk Roads that went through Parthian territory. Alright? Now, in the beginning of the 2nd century AD, Emperor Trajan annexed this kingdom over here called Dacia. This was the kingdom of Dacia, and there were some there were some protectorates of Dacia around that Rome also incorporated later on. It was in 106 AD. In 116 AD, they conquered Armenia, which is a big kingdom over here, and also the Parthian kingdom. It was very easy. Why? The rulers were Greek, they spoke Greek, and Greek was the spoken language of the whole Roman Empire, and the Greek culture over here was similar to the Greek culture in the Roman Empire, so it was very easy to quickly incorporate this whole federation into the Roman system. But what did Emperor Trajan do? He appointed a client king to rule over this place. And that client king was the son of the current of the Parthian king of that time. Because you had the Parthian king in the capital, but you also had a rebel over here that also claimed to be a king. So the whole Parthian federation was kind of falling apart, but then Rome came, and Rome appointed the son of Osrhoen the first. I hope I pronounced that right. Trajan appointed the son of the legitimate king as the new king of this vassal territory of Rome. Now, you may think, why, Rashid, are you talking about this piece of history? First of all, there's a lot unclear about how this history continued. Because shortly after the annexation of the Parthian kingdom, Emperor Trajan died. He was succeeded by Hadrian. Well, Hadrian removed the Roman troops that were in Mesopotamia, because what did the Romans do? Hold on. The Romans, not over Now you don't see it well. Okay, you can see it here too. The Romans, when they annexed the Parthian kingdom, they established a province called Mesopotamia and also another province called Assyria. And later Mesopotamia was also divided in Babylonia and Mesopotamia. And there was also another sub-province created called Osrhoene right over here. And let me maybe have a map that shows it much better. No, not this one. Hold on. No, that's not what I wanted to happen. Sorry, guys. Okay, here. Here you can see it clearly. Let me make this bigger. So they made they made 4 provinces of the western part of the Parthian kingdom, and the rest remained the Parthian Empire. Alright? But now, what was behind all of this? Because one thing you need to understand, nothing just happens in the world. You always have the spiritual behind it. Now, here you can see it much better. Later, the Romans also divided the Parthian province, Media, in 2 parts, in a Roman part and the Parthian part. Look, before Adrian went to annex Dacia, the Roman world was in a kind of a crisis. Italy was losing its position as the center of the world. So Trajan was an Italian but born in the south of Spain. He wanted to reinforce the centrality, the central role of Italy. Why? Because when you look at the map, Italy is at the center of the Mediterranean. That's also where Rome was, in the center of Italy. So it is important to keep the role of Italy as central. But there were also other problems going on at the time. Maybe there's another map. I can show you it. Okay, let me use this one. Look, let me make it smaller. One thing about the Romans was that they had a good road system, a very effective one. For example, if you lived in Olisipo, today it's called Lisbon, and you wanted to travel from here all the way to Rome, there was a good network of roads that could lead you all the way to Rome, because all the roads were centered towards Rome. If you had race horses, very fast horses, and you had some money, you could be from Olisipo to Rome within 10 days, 8 to 10 days, with the fastest horses of the time. This in the West. If you wanted to go to Britain, it would take the same amount of, it would take about 8 days, included to cross with a ferry over here. If you want to go to north of Roman Britain, together it would take about maybe 13 days or 2 weeks maximum. So the whole western part of the empire was reachable within 2 weeks from Rome. But still, it was a distance even for that time. And if you look at the map clearly, there are a lot of rivers, a lot of shores. So it's a very complicated place to navigate. But nevertheless, transport through shipping was quicker than through land. So the Roman Empire needed to have a better, a better maritime system. With that I mean they needed to build new naval ports, new port cities, and their they needed to build new shipyards, to build new ships and more, because the shipping in the West at the time was quite scrappy, to be frank. And to travel on the Mediterranean, especially in this area, it was quite dangerous at the time, even today, to sail over here. Why? Because you have the cold weather from the Alpine region and also from the north coming down here, and you have the warm weather from the south come here also, and above this sea over here it clashes. So you had a lot of storms on the sea over here. So to sail around here was quite dangerous. So the best way to reach Rome was to go through land over here, to cross here around Sicily and travel through here, or to go by road over here. But to reach the Rhine region and these parts, you would need to have a shipping network that operates well in the western shores. And of course, it was possible to sail around here, but as I mentioned before, the connections were not that well. So what did Trajan do? Trajan built Ostia. Ostia was a new town, and they built a modern harbor, a very complex harbor they built around Rome. Well, that will be a start, but still, he did not invest much in the transportation by sea, because transportation of goods and people by land took a lot of time. And what I mentioned before about being within 8 or 10 days from Rome to Lisipo, that was only with racehorses. Okay? With a common horse, you might take about 2 to 3 weeks before arriving in Rome, if you take it easy. Alright? Alright, so that was the situation before Trajan went to annex Dacia. Why? Because that's what often happens when there is a crisis. The leaders tend to distract the people with something else. And what was better than a political campaign to distract the peoples in the western provinces of the Roman Empire, and also the people of Italy itself? So after years of fighting battles, they have annexed Dacia, and it was a big victory for Rome. And throughout the Western Empire, there were celebrations that they had a new province. But the annexation of Dacia, well, the celebration was short-lived. So Trajan went out for the Parthian kingdom, and he succeeded. But here's the catch. Okay, let me look for that right map. Hold on a minute. Yeah. When Trajan annexes the whole area, these people over here, they didn't feel themselves Roman. They consider themselves Parthians or Greco-Parthians, right? So when they became part of the Roman Empire, the people are going to demand stuff from Rome, like citizenship. They would like to have aqueducts like everyone else in the Roman Empire has. They want to have better roads. They want to have baths. They want to have arenas. So Rome would have to finance both the construction of a new province over here and the construction and the modernization and or Romanization of the all the Greek countries over here that formed the Parthian kingdom. Now, at the time, you had no railways, you had no airplanes, you had no buses. So an army had to carry all their weaponry and move daily and build camps almost every day again to move themselves. So the common speed was between I believe between 11 and 20 kilometers a day. So that would mean that within 10 days they could reach 200 kilometers. 200 kilometers is like the size of one part of the Netherlands to another, or from London all the way to Wales, for example. They could reach such distance between 10 days. And of course, you also had the Roman Navy that could transport Roman land troops also. That was much faster. From Rome all the way to Egypt was about 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, you could have troops from Italy over here. But still, it was a long distance. And so it would take months for our troops stationed in ancient Portugal to go all the way to Dacia to fight when it's needed. So the Romans put legionary camps in various places, and often soldiers who were deployed at one legionary camp would switch after a while to another. That's to keep their troops from becoming, too attached to a certain place. All right. But now they had the Parthian kingdom. That would mean now that they would have to station more troops over here, over here, over here, over here. And you would also need, so it would become more difficult to communicate between the legionary camps. From Olisipo to, say, the Indus River that borders India, with the fastest horses through the south, probably would have taken about 30 days or 40 days. So that would be quite quick, but nevertheless it's a large region. And so if Rome would have Romanized this whole region over here, they would have went bankrupt. They wouldn't have had the Roman Empire anymore. So what did Hadrian do? Hadrian pulled back his land troops from around here. He went into a peace treaty with the Parthian king, the one that Trajan banned. That one came back. And from there it became quite quiet in history, in historical records, what really happened. Did Parthia remain a Parthian vassal? Did they Romanize it just a little bit? That's not clear. But what I want you to realize is the following. This region was impoverished compared to this whole region over here. This region here, the east of the Mediterranean, was the most populous, most populated. This one was less populated, but this part was relatively wealthy at the time. So if you have millions of people there that are living in an impoverished state over here, and they now become part of the Roman Empire, Imperium Romanum, what do you think many of those people are going to do? They are going to migrate towards the more wealthier places. And because the Eastern Mediterranean was already quite populated, they would go to the west. But what would happen then? You would have a big migration wave from the east into the Mediterranean, and this is going to cause a lot of trouble. So I'm not saying this is the case, but probably that's why the Romans did not invest much in Parthia. It was already a messed up polity anyway, and Rome, as I mentioned before, already had a lot of trouble at home. What do I mean by at home? As I mentioned before, in the West they had a communication problem and transportation problem in the economy. So to permit a huge migration wave into those lands, it would have been lethal for the empire. And here's the thing: empires are built on bloodshed. I'm talking about the world. Empires are kept alive through warfare. So Dacia was the last real challenge on mainland Europe that Rome could use as an excuse to fight war against. After they annexed Dacia, there was no more polity, no more tribal unity in Europe left that they could battle. And after they also annexed the Parthian kingdom, it was the Parthians and the Dacians that still posed a threat to Rome. That's all. When they were conquered, they had nearby no more military threats anymore. But here's the thing: it's an empire. Militarism was what kept the empire going. So they needed to have enemies to fight. Besides that, Trajan also annexed the Nabatean kingdom over here. So also the Arabs were subjected. They didn't dare to challenge Rome. So the only civilizations left that could challenge Rome were the Indian kingdoms. But as I mentioned before, to move troops at the time took a while, and it was quite expensive to move troops. The whole campaign against Dacia and annexed Parthia was already exhausting for the treasury of Rome. So to station new troops over here to fight warfare, man. What I'm trying to say with this is that not all instant successes are a blessing. Why? Trajan annexed Dacia, so he distracted the people from the local tensions who were around here. And Dacia had a lot of gold, so there was also a boost to the economy. They also annexed the Nabatean kingdom, which granted Rome access to much of the resources of Arabia, and they also annexed the Parthian kingdom. So it was a very quick manifestation within 10 years. Trajan basically had finished off with all military challenges against the Roman Empire. It happened very quickly, very swiftly. But here's the thing: Trajan was not prepared to deal with the consequences of those victories. Why? I already explained. To incorporate and manage his whole territory, it would have been fatal. Alright? And still, the issues in the West were not dealt with. And you see, guys, often in our, I would call, daily lives, we are similar to the Roman people at the time of Trajan. When there are quick manifestations, we rejoice. And there's nothing wrong with a quick manifestation. Okay? If something can be solved quickly, why not? There's nothing wrong with it. But be careful, not all swift manifestations are a blessing. Because look, blessings always come in disguise. And what happened over here, Dacia was defeated, but it was a blessing in disguise, because later on Dacia became more wealthier than most of the other eastern provinces of Rome, and many of the eastern provinces of Rome were even bankrupt later, a few decades later, and they became dependent on the Dacians, who were so adapted to the Roman world that Rome became partly dependent upon the Dacians. So the defeat of the Dacians was a blessing in disguise for them. But this swift success that Trajan had, it was a distraction disguised as a blessing. And I don't want to make fast conclusions, but also in present day politics in society, not just politics in society, such things happen. You can have 4 years long, you have one political party that's governing the country, and people are tired because they want things to be fixed. Then you have this one candidate that promises change, that promises that that the country is becoming great again. He even points out things that needs to be changed that most politicians won't address. Then a lot of people think this guy is against establishment, this guy is really for us. And when he becomes the prime minister or president or minister, whatever, indeed, quickly he does what he promised in his campaign. But just a few months later, or just a half year later, all the swift actions he took that gratified his voters or her voters, they're all cancelled. And now people are disappointed. People are so confused. What's going on? What has happened? There was a swift manifestation. And people perceive that swift manifestation as a blessing without discerning the context in which it happened. And similar things are happening today also. Look, I don't know all the answers. I can be mistaken about things. So I'm not telling you to rely upon what me nor upon what I say in these videos. Rely upon Christ and agree with Christ. Okay? That's where your safety is. Well,